Hello, my name is Valerie Curry, and I will be doing my presentation on the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, or MBTI. What we'll cover in this presentation is an introduction into Myers-Briggs, examine the scoring, consider some administration points, review the norms, and looking at the reports. We will do a critique of MBTI for career counseling and look at why some people use it for career counseling. And this is something I found that I thought was applicable. Okay, pause for giggle. And the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator is a self-assessment questionnaire that was developed by Catherine Cook Briggs and her daughter Isabella Briggs Myers. They developed it based on the work of Carl Jung, and his work was trying to gain an understanding of people's motivations, their strengths, and their areas of growth. He was looking at how people receive information and process it for decision making. And here's a quick little video on a little description of what the Myers-Briggs is and what it does.
Number 1943. Here, let me write it down.
Say hello to Jill and Bill. They work together but couldn't be any more different. See how they unwind after a long day. How they take in and express information, like giving directions.
Take Pine Street 0.6 miles, turn right on Chestnut Avenue, go 5 blocks north. It's the blue house on the left, number 1943. Here, let me write it down.
Go that way until you see the Stop and Shop, and then walk toward the ocean. You can't miss it.
How they make important decisions. How they organize things, like vacation plans. How they sometimes don't get along. But why is this? Perhaps the Myers-Briggs personality framework can provide answers. The Myers-Briggs Type Indicator Assessment is an effective way to assess your innate personality type preferences. Knowing your preferences can better equip you in making decisions, communicating with others, and so much more. For example, some people gain energy by interacting with others, while some recharge through quiet reflection alone. Some people take a detail-oriented approach to information, while others are drawn to the big picture. Some folks take an analytical approach to decision-making, while others focus on how their decisions will impact others. And some people prefer to make and stick to plans, while others take a less structured approach, keeping their options open. All you have to do is take a brief assessment to identify your preferences and determine your 4-letter personality type. Rest assured, it is not a test. There's no such thing as a right or wrong type, and it can't predict the future. But the Myers-Briggs assessment can provide you with a better understanding of yourself and those around you, at work, at home, and anywhere else you may go in life. It's never a bad time to work on your personal development, so get started today with the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator Assessment.
So that's just a brief overview of the tool. But MBTI is one of the most widely used personality assessment in the world. Over 2 million assessments are taken each year. It's translated into 24 languages and is used in over 70 countries. Most people are looking to use it for self-understanding, training leaders, looking at coaching opportunities, organizational development, diversity training, so having different types in your workforce, as well as understanding people from different backgrounds, problem solving, obviously career development and exploration. It's used for academic counseling, which kind of really relates well with the career development. It's used for curriculum development and relationship counseling. The Myers-Briggs assessment is based on Carl Jung's personality type theory. And as mentioned earlier, he was very concerned with people's differences in behavior and how it was related to how they processed information. When people act on their natural inclinations, they develop a natural pattern of behavior. Jung determined people develop a preferred behavior pattern based on their mental processes. Myers-Briggs expanded on his work. They looked further into the orientations of energy and looked at second and third and fourth preferences by adding another category of judging and perceiving, which is how people approach their decision making. Myers-Briggs and Carl Jung's works are based on these 4 preference dichotomies. The first one is extroversion and introversion, and this is where people get their energy. So do you get energized by being around a lot of people, or do you prefer introversions to recharge? So maybe go for a walk on your own or read a book or something along those lines. The second category is how we gather information. So do we prefer to do it through sensing, which is more taking information that is real and tangible, or is it based on intuition, which is seeing the big picture and focusing on relationships and connections? Decision making is looking at thinking and feeling. So thinking is looking at how people look at logical consequences of the choices of their actions, whereas feeling people look at how it affects themselves and others and relationships. And then judging and perceiving is how we relate to the external world, which really is just judging is, are you very organized and analytical, logical in how you approach something, or are you a little more flexible and kind of go with the flow, which is the perception area. So these are the 8 types. So again, the dichotomies are between extroverts and introverts. Sensors are intuitive, thinking and feeling, and judging and perceiving. Okay. From those 8 combinations, there can be 16 possible personality types developed. So Myers-Briggs took the 8 personality types and developed 16 personality types that reflect where people get their energy, how they see the world, how they process information, and how they make decisions. They developed a dominant type out of those 16 possible combinations, but they also considered people's second, third, and fourth preference processes. So even though you may come up with a dominant type, it's also good to reflect on your second and third processes, because that may be more applicable in a career situation or a home situation or some other kind of situation. So these are the 16 categories. ISTJ would be introverted, sensing, thinking, judging. So the letters just stand for the one of the 8 preference types. So this would be ISTJ would be, like I said, introverted, sensing, thinking, judging. They would be responsible executors. ISFJ would be introverted, sensing, feeling, judging. They would be dedicated stewards, and so on. So you can just kind of go through and review each of the 16 types and what their kind of taglines are. I'll just give you a second to do that. Okay. The scoring of the MBTI is done through a self-assessment process. The assessment determines their behavior patterns that can be categorized into their personality type. The client reviews a series of forced choice questions, so it will be either or. So do you want to go skydiving, or do you want to read a book? So you have to choose one or the other. There's no right or wrong answers in the assessment. It is what it is, and it just comes back with the reflection of your choices or your preferred behaviors. Clients can complete the assessment electronically and have a report generated automatically that is reviewed with their career counselor. There is also a paper-based assessment, but it is it's really kind of discouraged nowadays because MBTI is electronic. The results can be pretty much immediate, and you don't have to worry about hue and error on the paper-based one. The administration of the MBTI, it is appropriate for 14 years and up. You can do it with 12 to 13-year-olds. It's not recommended, and there are all kinds of cautionary statements if you're going to do it with people younger than 14, but it's like I said, recommended for 14 and up. It is suggested that it is at a 7th grade reading level, and there are 4 available forms. The Form M is kind of like a scaled down version. You can give it to people in advance. It is electronic. The MBTI Complete is probably the most applicable to career assessments and career planning. It's more in depth. It takes 60 to 90 minutes. The self-scorable one, again, paper-based, rarely used. And the Q Step 2 Facet, 25 to 35 minutes. That's another different type of form of report that gets a little more detailed into leadership and those kinds of things. When administering the MBTI, it is really important to clarify the assessment and its purpose, to make sure that your client is on board with doing this type of assessment, and they know exactly that it is something that is going to provide some guidance. It is not who they are and what they are, and it's a reflection of their behavior pattern, so it's just one of the tools in the toolbox. Don't call it a test. People get anxious when they talk about tests. It is an inventory. Just emphasize to them that there is no right or wrong answer. Again, explain the practical value of the MBTI, so it is a tool to give us some ideas, not something that you are married to. Like, you know, it's a jumping off point. When you are giving the assessment, it is a good idea to tune into the test taker's concerns, so you can generally get a read on people after you have been working with them for a bit, and see if they're sensing, intuitive, thinking, or introverts. Sensing types will want to make sure that they know the practical uses of the tests. Intuitive types, they want to look at the future benefits from it. Looking at the big picture of how it can work for them. Thinking types, they want to know exactly what the logical reason for doing this is, and they may have some skepticism of the test, so that's where you're going to have to look at the norms and the history of MBTI and just kind of validate for them that it is a valid and reliable assessment. Introverts, just make sure that they know that these test results are confidential and that only them and you, the assessor, will see the results. There's no time limit. You do not explain the meaning of questions. If they don't understand the meaning of the question, they are to skip those questions. Skipping is not to be encouraged, but we don't want to affect clients' responses by giving our interpretation of a question. And explain the test taking instructions clearly and clarify that the participant understands what is expected of them. The norms for the test, it has been used in 30 plus countries on all continents. All types appear in all cultures, so all the 16 types do appear in all cultures. Test takers report a positive fit with their type by employment status in a rate of 0.86 to 0.92, by ethnicity by 0.8 to 0.92, age group 0.86 and 0.92, and international English version of a 0.81 to 0.91. It should be noted that these are stats from MBTI's own research. And so they are saying that it is a very reliable source, since the normal rate of acceptable testing is at 0.7. So they are very confident with the reliability and validity of their test. National representatives are determined from the United States and the United Kingdom. but there have been hundreds of other samples of inconvenience from other countries. So the main source of this testing is from the US and the UK, but they have had actually thousands and thousands of other samples from countries from all around the world. Again, test takers report a positive fit with their type, by employment, by ethnic group, by age group, so that once somebody takes the test, generally at least 80% of the time they report that yes, they agree with the results. On retests, people score 3 out of 4 of the same types 90% of the time, and people agree with their reported results. Career behavior consistency amongst types in varying cultures, example teachers. So if they do a test in the US and the teachers are generally all coming back as ESFJ, they do a test in the UK, the teachers are all generally coming back as ESFJ, they do a test in France, the teacher results are basically coming back as ESFJ. The nice thing about the MBTI as well is that it does show a consistent type compared to other assessments as well. So, example, looking at the 4-letter code can line up nicely with Holland codes or other different types of assessments, so it's showing same kind of behavior patterns and personality types. Validity, again, we talked about this already, but people agree with the reported results 90% of the time. Again, career behavior is consistent, and correlation with correlation with other instruments is consistent. So, quick quiz. True or false? Myers-Briggs is based on the work of psychologist Carl Jung. True. True or false? Myers-Briggs has 16 different personality types. True. True or false? Myers-Briggs uses questions with forced choice options. You choose this or that. True. And lastly, true or false? Myers-Briggs is appropriate for people 14 or older and with a minimum 7th grade reading level. And that is also true. Okay, so this is a link to a sample MBTI report. And we'll just go through this a little bit. About the report, it kind of gives you some idea about what they're assessing. So looking at the 4 dichotomies, so extroversion, introversion, sensing, intuition, thinking, feeling, and judging and perceiving, and giving a little bit of a description on that. And then it gives you what your personality type comes back as. So this one is extroversion, sensing, thinking, judging. It gives you a description, just like a snapshot description of what some of the characteristics that this type demonstrates. So, extroversion, or people tend to direct their energy toward the outside world and get energized by interacting with people and taking action. Sensing, they tend to be taking information that is real and tangible. Thinking, typically based on logic, accuracy, and are objective. And judging, they come to conclusions quickly, they are organized, and take a planned approach to the world. And then they kind of show you where it is on the chart. This chart here is showing how much they are towards that. So if this person here scored in the likely category that they're extroverted, so there might be some times when they were introverted, but you can see the sensing, they are very strong in the sensing area and the thinking area. Judging, again, they're strong but not as strong, so there might be some times when they lean towards perceiving as well. The report also goes into your work style, your work preference, your communication style, and then your unique preference pattern, problem-solving approach, and then next steps would be working on areas for development. When reviewing these reports with clients, kind of hone in on the area that they would like to discuss on, so they may want to process some of this information on their own. For career counselors, they may want to focus in on work style and work preference for the report. Okay. So the advantages of using MBTI, it is widely used, so many people are familiar with the types and what they mean. It does give in-depth reports. It is easy to use by the client because of the forced questions. They have this or that, so there's not a lot of, do I do this, somewhat of the times, or all of the time, or never? So it's this or that, so there's a lot of that range is eliminated. It's easy to administer by counselor. It's basically get them hooked up onto a website and get them to complete the assessment. MBTI's research shows that it is reliable and that it is valid, and it is well in the range of acceptable standards. It is fairly cost effective. You can get reports for students for at about $25 to $30. Generally, the most of the report that we showed was, I think it's in the $60 to $70 range. But you do have options of more in-depth reports or less detailed reports. It does link with other career assessments such as the STRONG inventory, which is very helpful, and it does provide a framework for understanding yourself as well as understanding how others are thinking and feeling and making decisions and all those fun things. Some of the disadvantages of MBTI, the norms are based on US and UK groups. Even the ethnic groupings are based from the US and the UK, so there is some debate on the validity of that. It is a self-reporting assessment, so you do need to kind of coach your clients to make sure that they are giving honest responses and that they are answering on how they really are, not how they would like to be. The responses are also subjective, so if the person is having a bad day or not feeling the greatest about themselves, that may reflect the assessment results. It does indicate preference, but not the strength of the preference. So, it will say that you prefer to do something 84% of the time, but it doesn't say whether you're good at doing that or not. As mentioned before, there is some debate on the validity of MBTI within academic circles. It is based on soft science, like all psychiatry, psychology. Some people think that it might not be as valid as, say, something that can be proven hard and fast. There is some temptation about human resource departments using it for screening or succession planning, but this is highly discouraged by MBTI. And sometimes when people get a label, they think that they are stuck in that label, or they will label somebody else that way and just say, well, you're doing that because you are an extrovert, or you're doing that because you have a strong sensing personality. And people need to realize that, again, this is just your preference. It doesn't mean that you act that way all of the time. For career counseling, some assumptions that MBTI is making is that people are attracted to careers where they can express their preference and complete tasks that are interesting and challenging to them, and receive a reward for the things they like to do. People tend to be unsatisfied or avoid careers that do not meet the above criteria, and different types will have different criteria for job satisfaction. So For example, someone who is an extrovert, sensing, thinking, judging person would have a very different criteria than somebody that is an introvert, intuitive, feeling, perceiving person. So those assumptions are based on the career reports. The MBTI and career counseling, also there is a correlation between type and occupation and can identify possible career matches. So again, in the example of the ESTJ, there would be a list of possible career matches based on that type. The MBTI provides direction for further career research, so you can look up careers based on your type. For example, in ONET. You need to have client buy-in and to take ownership of the results. So that's why it's really important that when you review the results with the client, that you make sure that they say, oh yes, this does sound like me, or this is correct, or this isn't correct, and then examine the reasons why they think that's not correct, and then you can go through their responses and see why they got the score they did, and then look at why they responded the way they did. The MBTI should always be used in a combination with other tools. Like I said earlier, it is not the be-all and the end-all. You are not married to it. It is something that will give you some guidance, give you some food for thought and self-reflection, and give you some things to consider on what you want to do with your career. And it also gives you a framework for answering interview questions. So, tell me a situation where you had to respond to conflict. And so you can reference your MBTI and look at, oh, okay, this is a way that I responded, and use some of the language and the terminology based from MBTI. So this is a quote from Isabella Briggs Myers. The best adjusted people are the psychologically patriotic and who are glad to be what they are. So I really like this quote because MBTI gives us a snapshot on how we interact, and being true to that self, or recognizing how we interact, can be a big portion of looking at things that are going to make us happy in the future. So basically being true to ourselves and using that information to find careers, activities, relationships, hobbies, whatever it is, that we are going to feel comfortable and we are going to enjoy, and looking at those things and matching them up with our future goals is something that MBTI can help us with. So yeah, that is my presentation. If you have any questions, please send me an email. This is the list of the things that we're excited. Personally, I really like MBTI. I haven't used it with clients, but I have done it myself, and I did agree with my results, with the exception of one that I'm just sit on the fence on. But I did find it was a very accurate reflection of me, and it was a really good opportunity for me to self-reflect and kind of look at why I do some of the things I do and ways that I could improve on those things. So thank you, and have a good day.